Since its founding in 2017, the Oromo Legacy Leadership and Advocacy Association and Executive Director Sine, one of my constituents, has worked tirelessly to support democracy, inclusion, representation, and human rights in Ethiopia and globally.
And I personally want to thank the Oromo Legacy Leadership and Advocacy Association Executive Director Sina Jimjimo and President Ayantu Abdushila for hosting this event today. I hope my pronunciation was close, even with my Minnesota accent.
Yes, not all advocacy is lobbying. Lobby is mostly specifically when you're trying to change regulations or policy.
Peace in Ethiopia.
No peace in Ethiopia.
Election yes.
Election yes.
Democracy yes.
Democracy yes.
Peace yes. Peace yes. War no.
Or no.
War no.
To the Oromo, it is the Ghana which is important.
Achalu's work in music was actually the one that actually gave us a comfort that one day this will change. But at the same time, it's also the one that disturbed the people in power at that time. And so that's the true nature of an act.
And so Ero means a winner, a warrior.
This Lencha underlined. Lencha means in Afan Oromo Jaba or strong.
For example, if I share something to Urji, Urji will probably share with 3 of her friends, her 3 friends will share with other 3 friends. So it continues moving on, it continues adding its value.
New York Times jetta, Washington Post jetta, Associated Press jetta,
always an appeal button. What's ridiculous about Oromo things in Ethiopia is Oromo is not a minority, yet Oromo is still paying completely controlled by the system that's actually not respecting Oromo people.
Kana caalaa wanni gaafatamu hin jiru.
Dhiibbaan kun jira. Walqii adda addaatti hirmaannee dhiibbaan kun resolution kun bareeda. Maal jettee wanni tokko.
The Wallo massacre is real, and that is done by Amara militias. That is doing genocide in Tigray, and this need to stop, and this need to stop fast. And the international community need to act on this. They need to voice their concern, and they need to take steps.
for the Prime Minister's office to be part of any stream program when we are talking about Ethiopia. Also, if you're on YouTube, if you're commenting, you are very welcome to be in this program. I know you have many, many opinions, and jump into the comment section, be part of today's discussion. Madia, I really want to get to sense of what is happening to women and girls and the extent of the sexual violence, the extent of the rapes. Can you share some of the stories that you know are absolutely happening?
Sure. So 6 months on now from the start of the conflict in the Tigray region, there have been widespread reports of sexual violence and abuse in and around Tigray because of the conflict, as well as a number of different ways in which women are generally being impacted because of the crisis, which we can get on to later. I've been on both sides of the border in Tigray itself, as well as in East Sudan, where over 60,000 refugees from Tigray have fled to. And I've spoken to many of the displaced people within the camps in Tigray, as well as over the border in East Sudan. And pretty much everyone I spoke to recounted multiple accounts of having witnessed or heard of gang rape happening in Tigray, as well as countless evidence of other abuses as well on women and girls. Furthermore, a recent gender analysis that the International Rescue Committee did just found that women are, as in any humanitarian crisis, are bearing the brunt of this crisis.
Maza, as a Tigray activist, and you're looking at this situation in your home region, and what are you seeing? What are you hearing, particularly when it's involving women and girls?
We continue to hear how weaponized rape is being used as a deliberate strategy to shame, torture, and harm not only the women and girls of Tigray, but also the Tigrayan community in general. We also hear that weaponized rape alongside other war tactics is being used to erase and cleanse the Tigrayan identity and the people. So clearly, the sexual violence, the weaponized rape, it's increasing day by day. And the brave survivors that were, able to tell their stories, to speak with journalists, are facing a very mounting harassment and attack by the illegitimate Ethiopian government and its cronies within Ethiopia in Tigray.
Zaina, how much official acknowledgement has there been about these rapes, these attacks actually happening?
Fahmi, thank you for that question. As Maza has said, the situation in Tigray is extremely, extremely sad. But the reality is, I might as well say, is that this is across, particularly between Oromia and Tigray. It is a situation that my organization, I'm very concerned about it. Since 2018, since Abiy came to power, he have been raping, that have been used by Ethiopian soldiers across Ethiopia, especially in Oromia, as well as Tigray is obviously the international community is paying attention. In 2018 alone, Ethiopian Amnesty International document, there was a rape, there was an extrajudiciary killing in particularly Guji area, but unfortunately that issue is not being talked about, and that's really what I want to really talk about. Of course, in addition to the report that is getting in Tigray and what the women of Tigray is facing as Ethiopian, obviously we are beyond disbelief that Ethiopian soldiers would commit this, but it's really nothing new. We have used a rape as a weapon of war to really punish the women, the girls, and the issue is not being discussed is the issue about Oromian women.
I see, Maza, you're nodding your head. Go ahead, articulate the nod.
Yeah, I just wanna add to the fact that rape is being used as a weapon of subjugation, not only in Tigray but also all across in the country. If you are from an ethnic group that opposes a unitarist and centralized governance, then you will be met with different kinds of harrowing war tactics, including and particularly weaponized rape. So I just wanted to add to the fact that also women and young girls in Oromia are being gang raped, not only by Ethiopian members of the army, but we also hear reports of Eritrean troops being deep in Oromia committing the same kind of genocidal crimes that they have been and continue to commit in Tigray.
I want to bring in here Mary Clark, and Mary Clark makes a point of how difficult it is for women in Ethiopia anyway to report rape, sexual abuse. Here she is. Have a listen to this, Madia, and then come off the back of this video.
Rape and other forms of sexual violence are so taboo in this region, like in many other places, that women and girls are afraid to report. But what we do know is that the few safe houses are completely overwhelmed. What's needed now is an investment in local Tigrayan organizations who are the first responders to this crisis.
Yeah, so I completely agree with that. We do need to engage local organizations. I mean, one of the things that we have seen, of course, at the International Rescue Committee is the widespread underreporting of these crimes just because of the stigma attached. So there's really no real way of getting an idea of the scale of what's happening just because of the underreporting. But given the reports that we're hearing from others, you know, the situation is so widespread. So I'm scared to think how widespread in reality the situation is. And I think it's also important at this point just to point out that you know, there are other ways that women are suffering because of this conflict. I mean, one of the things that we found in our gender analysis that we carried out at the International Rescue Committee was we found out that women are having to engage, for example, in sexually exploitative relationships just in order to be able to survive or feed their children for very little amounts of money, up to $1.25, just to be able to feed their children. So as I said, women are, you know, bearing the brunt of this conflict.
I'm just looking at this headline. Over 90% of people in war-hit Tigray need food aid. UN's World Food Programme says hunger levels are increasing in the northern Ethiopian region as it appeals for $203 million to scale up the response. All right, so there are multiple problems going on, as always happens when there's a conflict situation. Let me go to YouTube. I'm going to put this to you, Maza. Dawit says on YouTube, tens of thousands of prisoners were released from Tigray prisons. It looks complicated to me. Who is killing and raping is difficult to answer. Is it?
It really is not. It really isn't. All it takes is to listen to the survivors, to listen to the victims. And the people of Tigray, particularly the women of Tigray, know who is doing what to them. And like more than 100 times, they have told us that Ethiopian troops, Amhara militias, and also soldiers from the Ethiopian National Army are the ones raping them, violating their body, and telling them that they're doing it in order to cleanse their blood, in order to make sure that the Tigrayan womb never gives birth. So it's not really difficult. All it takes is to listen to the survivors. And in order for all of this to come to light, there needs to be an independent investigation led by the UN and UN only, so that the international community could really see what the Tigrayan people, particularly the women, have been going through for the past over 200 days of active genocidal war, and hold those you know, people that are inflicting the pain accountable.
So one of the things that we were asking for this program is not just relate these horrific stories, but asking who is to be held accountable, who is going to help the civilians of Tigray who need outside help if they're not getting it from within Ethiopia. Let me ask that and put that to you, Saina. Where do you think the help should come from?
Fahmi, that's interesting. And I see the UN is doing a joint investigation with the Ethiopian Human Rights Commission. Per se, for us, Ethiopian Human Rights Commission is extremely biased. And I'll give you one example. In 2020, when Hajar was killed, murdered, and within 24 hours, over 100 people died. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission took about 6 months to come up with the report. Last November, they had conducted a visit about 21 prisons, and they found women, children ages 5 months and to 10 years old. They found women in each of these prisons, and they've seen a lot of violence and torture and all of this. Like Maza said, that I mean, it's obvious who's committed this, and for the UN and for the US even to take in organizations such as Ethiopian Human Rights Commission to be part of the investigation when they have covered up by the issue of my Caldra. The way I saw it was covered up because the way it came out first and the way it came out eventually unveiled is a little bit different. So who should be really accountable? Who should do this investigating? I mean, unless this is because Africa and Africa problem for African solution for Africa problem is a joke, because the perpetrators is the Abiy administration. He purposely have sent the soldiers, have sent the military into Tigray, into Oromia to commit this very act along with the Eritrean soldiers. Eritrean soldiers are in Oromia deep since last July. Our organization talked to State Department about this issue. We know they are in Bali. We know they are in Guji, in different parts of the country, along with Amhara militia. So to even ask that who should investigate, I mean, it's obvious. Like Maza say, listen to the victim. It's not complicated. It's straightforward. I'm pretty sure the victim can speak for themselves. To even include Ethiopian government as to investigate itself, as I think is just injustice by itself.
This is the UN Secretary General's spokesperson. This is what he has to say. Maza, come off the back of his statement. Let's have a listen.
Serious violations of international humanitarian and human rights law must be promptly investigated and the perpetrators brought to justice. We, along with our partners, are ready to engage with military commanders to ensure protection of civilians.
I wanted to answer to the previous question. Where should the help come from, and who needs to be held accountable? The help should come from the international community, particularly from the UN Security Council, because it's the UN Security Council that can impose strong punitive measures upon both the Ethiopian government and the Eritrean government, so that all the genocidal war could stop, but at the same time, the suffering and the pain of Tigrayan women could at least get a glimpse of justice. And who needs to be held accountable are the people that are continuing to inflict an unimaginable level of suffering on the Tigrayan people, including the women. These are forces from the Amhara region, these are forces from Eritrea, and also from the Ethiopian National Army. But overall, the number one enemy of the people of Tigray is the Ethiopian state by itself. It's the Ethiopian state that enabled Eritrean troops to infringe on the sovereignty of the country, to enter into Tigray and to loot, rape, and kill the Tigrayan people. So it's obvious who needs to be held accountable, the Ethiopian government primarily, but also all of its cronies. But at the same time, the help needs to come from the UN Security Council.
So this is a thought from Denat, who put this on YouTube for this conversation. Can we reasonably expect the UN and also the Human Rights Council to investigate these crimes to be transparent and independent? Can we reasonably expect that? Sena, you go first.
I mean, here's the thing. This is the way I see. You got to pick what's the base. And at this point, non-Ethiopian government, the Ethiopian system, I just mentioned to you the issue of current Abiy, since he came to power 3 years ago, on the back of Oromo protests, 5,000 Oromo young men died, and the rest of them, as the U.S. government have put out there, they are either in prison, they're dead, or they have joined the armed struggle because they lost hope. That, to me, first of all, the issue needs to be looked at it from a bigger angle, and to make sure that you cannot address exclusively and without really looking at it. So the UN, can they address this? When you look at it, who do we have? I mean, UN is the best we got. I think they could, if there's anybody that could do that, I think the UN would be the best. International community would be the second. And the third, I mean, I have zero hope, as I said earlier. The Ethiopian government is perpetuator. They have committed this on Oromos for 3 years before they got to the war in November, and nobody's speaking about that. And we must really speak about the rape, the woman, the torture, the mass killing, the mass imprisonment of political prisoners. Over 50,000 political prisoners lay in Oromia, and nobody's talking about that. There's women being raped, young men, boys aged 10 being raped in Oromia by Ethiopian soldiers. I think the UN is the best, and obviously Tigray is, very small community, and the Abiy regime, along with Amhara and Tigray, is to really want to wipe out, and whatever leftover, they want to cleanse them.
The UN doesn't just walk into countries, right? They have to be invited. They can't just do an investigation. Isn't that the biggest challenge? And weren't we told several months ago that the conflict in the Tigray region was over?
But that's the challenge. I mean, I'm saying, like, when you have a regime like Abiy, who's never elected, I mean, he is there in power by force, never elected. He never came to power through armed struggle. He's in power in the back of Oromo youth, Oromo Keros, who are in prison or dead. But to really negotiate with such a dictator, I don't even know what to call him. I mean, to legitimize Abiy as a leader that the UN should negotiate with, that's to me mind-boggling too. But I understand.
All right.
I understand where they have to negotiate.
Yeah, but it was at one point that you were a big fan of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, were you not?
You know what, Fami? I must admit it indeed, because, for 20 years we protested here in diaspora for change. For 20 years we lost our life behind, just like now, working day now to make a noise. And 3 years ago, Abiy came to here. I met him several times, apologized and seeked for forgiveness. We was part of the regime for 27 years that made us refugee in America. My parents was in prison, my brother, my relative, my uncle was killed by previous government. And today, you know what I'm saying, unfortunately, he turned around to bite the hands that fed him. But you know what? But he committed worst type of crime. And the UN really, really need to push. I mean, how long can we wait? I mean, what needs to happen in Tigray? Because in Tigray, the situation is blindly seen. Everybody, the camera is there. They're seeing it. But nobody is seeing what's happening in Oromia. Nobody's talking about the prisoners. Oromia hold the largest prisoners, and all of those prisoners are Oromo. Women, young children. Ethiopian Human Rights Commission put out a statement in May 6th. They visited 21 prisons. They found children, age 5, they've been in prison since July of last year. So it's very painful. Yes, we obviously root for him because we got tired after protesting for 27 years that we thought this man have learned something in the EPDRF gave him a chance to transition the country into democracy.
All right.
But eventually, yes.
All right, so Saina, Marza, and Madia, the reason we did this show is because we wanted to ask is a very practical question. We've seen the horrific allegations, the stories, the accounts from the women who have been raped. How to stop Ethiopia's weaponized sexual violence? That was the big overall question that we were trying to wrestle with. This is Christina Serra with one answer.
Women and girls' lives have been taken from them. Some may die from their physical and psychological injuries, or even worse, from HIV and AIDS. Tigray is losing its anchor. What is a country without the women who sustain its communities? How do you bring a person that has died back to life? You help put them back together again. You give them their power back through health, security, justice, and resources to start afresh. The women and girls cannot depend on leaders who have instructed their soldiers to commit acts of sexual violence. The international community must step up and provide them with the desperate security and protection that they need and will need for years to come.
Marza, there are lots of people who are suggesting this is the solution. These are the people who we need to come in and help with these atrocities that are happening to civilians. Have a look here on my laptop. This tweet, look into the AU. All boxes are checked for genocide, starvation, rape, door-to-door execution, looting, destruction of homes, heritage sites, burning crops, ethnic cleansing. This is an opinion, but we're hearing lots of reports that fall into this kind of category. This is me editorializing here. What is the African Union doing to play a role in protecting women and children? The African Union is right there, right? The home of the African Union is in Addis.
Yeah, the African Union for all purpose has failed the people of Tigray. They have sided with the genocidal regime in Ethiopia and have been seen multiple times justifying the raping and the looting and the distraction of Tigray. So the African Union at this point, the best thing they can do for the people of Tigray, particularly for the women that are suffering from the weaponized rape, is to refer the case to the ICC or to the UN and ask an international intervention. I understand sovereignty could be an issue, and that's why, Femi, earlier you were talking to how UN cannot just walk into a country and try to stop a genocide. However, what's happening to the people of Tigray is not an internal matter. This is not an issue where intergovernmental organizations should talk about sovereignty, because for all purpose, the Ethiopian government infringed on its own sovereignty by inviting a foreign enemy to help in its mission to exterminate the people of Tigray. So the talk of sovereignty has been gone long time ago. But the UN has a particular responsibility to protect marginalized groups, vulnerable people that are facing a genocide, a state-sponsored genocide. So the UN has all mandate and moral obligation to intervene and stop the ongoing genocide.
So I just want to bring up a statement here. It comes from the United States government, from the White House, basically. And this statement came out at the very end of May. And it's acknowledging what is going on in northern Ethiopia, large-scale human rights abuses taking place in Tigray, including widespread sexual violence. So it talks about it, it's noted it, it's seen it, but then what is the action, Saina?
I mean, the US have really taken a leadership, especially it took a very long time for the US to act and for the State Department because the war broke out in November. And this is a good start. But as Maaza said, that as a sovereignty issue really ended a long time ago when the regime openly declared war on its own people, invited foreign military to intervene. And I think what's missing from the conversation is the bigger one I mentioned to you, Fahmi, is the issue of Oromia, because Abiy have started this violence against Oromos 3 years ago. Amnesty International have put out a report in May of last year where they documented count after count of extrajudiciary of killing children aged 15. And the Biden administration have did a wonderful job, but right now it's time to act. I mean, every day we are waiting, we're missing, we're losing lives.
Talking about running out of time, I know that feeling. Madia, I want to bring the conversation back to you. We started with you. I'm going to bring it back to you because, again, how do you stop weaponizing sexual violence? How do you stop that?
Well, we spoke at the beginning of the show about how gender-based violence in humanitarian settings are woefully underfunded. And so I would suggest, the G7 summit, for example, would provide an ideal opportunity for renewed commitment to gender equality in humanitarian settings. Listening to bodies like the G7 Gender Equality Advisory Council is a tangible way to include such perspectives. But these conversations have been happening for years about how to prevent rape as a weapon of war. And local women's organizations have the unique ability to be able to reach and empower women and girls in their own communities every day. And investments at a grassroots level have a much greater impact. So without adequate funding to support these organizations, commitments made at the global level will make little to no difference on the ground. So funding is equally important.
Thank you so much. We started the conversation with you. We ended it with you. Madia, thank you. Sena, thank you. Marza, thank you so much. YouTube and on Twitter, appreciate your comments and being part of today's program. I will see you next time. Thanks for watching, everybody.